So we move on to the other kind of football, men's soccer, because they did make the America East tournament with a 1-0 victory over UAlbany on All Saints Day. But then, this past Saturday, they actually played at Laval Stadium because the win earned them a home game.
Number 4 seed
tournament. They played the 5, UMBC, and they ended regulation with a 1-1 draw. Then it had to go down to penalty kicks because in a playoff game you have to have a winner. And they lost it 8-7 on penalty kicks. Heartbreaker.
Yeah, that again, there are many ways to lose a game, and it sucks the way they did. It was honestly incredible, show of heart by that Retrievers team. Just to break it down for you, Quantrill Jones played a phenomenal game. I think even the best game of the season across all the CAA or America East, which is impressive considering, the only ranked team in the America East is New Hampshire. But Quantrill Jones, again, only giving up the 1 goal. Even when he gave it up, he didn't get 2 down. He hyped up his teammates before they even had a chance to, raise his head again. He stayed in the game. Anyway, after 110 minutes, as you said, they go to the shootout, and they give up 7 straight. Both him and the Stony Brook goaltender give up 7 straight goals. But that doesn't deter either of them. Jones makes a great diving stop at the end, and then he ends up going to take the penalty kick, then catching everyone off guard on the Seawolves, and ultimately it flies past the goalie's extended arm, and it moves UMBC on to the semifinals. So just literally something out of a movie that finish was. And for the Seawolves, a heartbreaker, yes. But when reflecting on the end of the season as a whole, I think they're going to be more than pleased, especially considering this team was projected to finish 8th and be nowhere near the playoffs like they were the past couple seasons. But this team, I thought, was really good, playing a well-balanced game. I didn't think they really excelled at one spot in particular. They were very middle of the pack in scoring, goals allowed, saves, ball control, etc. But they did, I think, everything right and just enough to get into the postseason. And again, after the past couple seasons where they really struggled at honestly just doing basic, minute things you expect, a prominent collegiate soccer team to do. I think Coach Anatole is definitely more than proud of his team. And I think thanking them honestly for probably saving him and his job because, you have another bad season like they have the past couple. I think the clock's ticking there. But, Coach Anatole, I think, has a lot to build off.
The nice thing about it, and if you follow along with me, go to the recap at StonyBrookAthletics.com. The stats and notes impress me because this tells me, and this is the type of thing you have to do in the playoffs. You have to step up your game in the playoffs. If your scoring average in the playoffs is higher than your regular season scoring average, you're doing pretty good. But the Seawolves arguably played their best overall game of the season despite losing. And in soccer, that happens all the time. They controlled the ball for 60% of the possession, 60% of the time. 20 shots, season high. Also, their previous high, 16, came against the Retrievers in Baltimore, October 9th. 8 corners, one off the team's season high of 9. And Aki Solveson was all over the offensive end. 7 shots at 4 on frame, both the career highs. Jonas Bickus' 4 shots are also a season career high. So you had personal bests from a lot of the players. You had team bests. And that's what you want in a playoff game. And if you're Ryan Anatole, you have to think that your guys left it out there.
No, agreed. And you just see that in the box score. They outshot UMBC 20-9. If you want to look at where this team, I think, fell, was the shots on goal was only 6-3. So, the Seals are taking a lot of shots, but not too many challenging that of Quantrill Jones. Meanwhile, for Edmund Kaiser, he only 6 shots came his way, but he still, for half of those, had to, do his best to make sure they didn't go in the back of the net. And one of them ultimately finding their way in the back of the net. Well, 2 at the end of the game. But, again, that was really, I think, their biggest misfire was that they were taking a lot of shots, controlled a lot of the ball, but they didn't really take too many threatening shots. Although Jones did he did have his fair share of saves. But again, as I said, for a team where they were at the bottom of the pile in scoring in the last couple seasons, in shots and producing, honestly, just generating good soccer. No, I think it was more an impressive season. Honestly, just a good season to build off, especially when you look at these guys who stepped up, like Silla Kauche or Jonas Bekas or Aki Slovason. They're all underclassmen. No one's older than a sophomore. So you got a couple seasons left with this core group intact. And volleyball quickly set it straight. It was interesting watching them. On Friday and earlier today, they lost to UAlbany 3-0. They beat NJIT 3-0 again. And this is a team where they're consistent in that you're gonna get extremes on both sides. Either they're gonna come out, on fire, sweep, or just dominate on the attack, like they did today against NJIT again. Abby Campbell in particular, Aaron Gara. That middle blocker combo combining for 22 kills. Very impressive on the afternoon. Hitting 500 as well, which is phenomenal. Hard to do against those front rows in the America East. Yeah. But again, you had a game like UAlbany where Stony Brook they didn't have that great of a start, and UAlbany is a much better team than NJT, obviously. They're going to be in the playoff one. But with UAlbany, again, just really, I feel like they had stepped up in that extra gear that the Seawolves weren't able to do and really suppressed the offense. And you see that in their hitting percentage. They hit under 12%, while UAlbany hit over 20%. And, no teams winning the game hitting 12%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, where does that leave us right now? Because UMBC has clinched the regular season title, undefeated in conference, as we know. We talked about this last week. Stony Brook and UAlbany have clinched playoff spots, as have New Hampshire. So, looking ahead to the volleyball team and what's coming up for them.
Well, next week's going to be fun. It's senior day, number one, although I think they're only one county first star, if I remember correctly. But really, it's going to be a battle between the last remaining undefeated team and UMBC. And it's interesting because the shoe was on the other foot a couple seasons ago, where Stony Brook traveled to UMBC undefeated, and UMBC delivered a 5-set classic, ultimately falling short in that final set, 15-13, I've been 16-14, if I recall correctly. So, it's going to be a tight contest, although UMBC has dominated the conference competition, reminiscent of that undefeated volleyball team from a couple seasons ago.
So, the nice thing about that is the final regular season contest will be taking place in Pritchard Gym, and it'll be taking place on Friday at 6 p.m. So, and again, for great those opportunity seniors, to watch the team.
Yeah, and again, for those seniors like Paige Yeager or Haley Barden on the outside, or as I said, County Chris Sutter, they're going to be playing with that chip on their shoulder, as is the rest of the team, because they're likely going to face UMBC again in the postseason. Although they're the 1 and 2 seeds, should Stony Brook beat the 3 seed, UMBC beat the 4 seed, it's going to wind down being one of those two teams are going to end up being the champion. So this is obviously going to be a test, and I think prepare them for the game plan heading in to next week. Do I think, honestly, right now, the Seawolves team should be UMBC? No. But that said, this Seawolves team has really pulled off some incredible upsets the past couple of years. Because if you told a lot of people that number 4 seed team that snuck into the playoffs back in 2017 would end up sweeping UAlbany and Binghamton, they would have called you a liar. But it happened. And Stony Brook, I think, really uses these last games, especially under head coach Kristen Belzung, really use these last games as a sort of strategy builders, so that even if they end up falling, they use what they learned from these contests and apply it in the next matchups and ultimately turn the tide around, catch a lot of teams off guard.
So that's where we stand right now, because if the season did end today, it doesn't. The seedings are pretty much locked, okay? But not necessarily, because I believe the Seawolves have one more game to play. UAlbany has one more game today to play. New Hampshire's got 2 left. Mm-hmm. Let me just take a look at this here. New Hampshire's schedule, well, no, they were supposed to have a game against Binghamton. That got postponed, and then they finish up at Hartford this week. So I don't know if that game is going to get played or whether it's going to figure into the standings. They're already in the playoffs. Whether or not it affects the 2-3-4, we'd have to look back and look at the head-to-heads. Regardless, it looks like Stony Brook is going to end up playing Albany in the playoffs, regardless of the UMBC result. But Albany, it's quite possible. Let's just take a look real quick. They've got Binghamton on Friday as well. So, yeah, seeding, I take it back. The seedings are yet to be determined. Who gets home court advantage? It's still up in the air. So, we still have...
Also, and again, it's also why the Seawolves are going to be playing. I think, obviously, for the win, they are every week, but it's going to be important, too, because should the Great Danes and New Hampshire win, then Stony Brook ends up rematching against UMBC next week. UMBC already clinched the top seed, seeds 2 through 4. We know the teams, it's Seawolves, Great Danes, and Wildcats, but we don't really know the seedings as of now. As of now, Stony Brook and UAlbany are tied for second and third. It won't really matter where they seed in the end, just because the semifinals and finals are going to be played at UMBC Arena. But at the same time, again, this team, they have a lot to play for. And again, all the players, I think, really have a chip on their shoulders. I think a lot of them feel like they've been underrated. And with how well this UMBC team has performed in the past season, I think they feel like they're overlooked because they've really turned it around from a struggling abridged season last year. And again, with the roster turnaround from what the championship teams had a couple seasons ago.
Yep, absolutely. So we still have a little bit of volleyball left to cover. Now we have to shift over to the hockey team. And the hockey team went down to Lynchburg, Virginia this past weekend and hit a wall.
Yeah.
Back-to-back losses at Liberty. 3-1 and then 4-3 in a shootout. It tells you something. First of all, well, it ends a 7-game winning streak. But your computer rankings, Liberty is ranked just above Stony Brook 3/4. Now, I don't know if this weekend scores were figured into that, or was that going into the weekend?
Going into the weekend.
That tells you everything you need to know right there. Of the 3 schools ranked ahead of Stony Brook, Liberty's one of them, and Liberty took it to Stony Brook on the road. I mean, Stony Brook was on the road. Liberty was at home. They get Liberty back in January, I believe, looking at the schedule. So
pretty sure
that will be a hell of a matchup. It will be January 22nd and 23rd at the rinks. So, but that is the first time they've been swept in a weekend series, because the only other loss they've had all year, they split against Davenport early in the season. So a little bit of a wake-up call to the Seawolves that they can't just run over everybody in a cakewalk.
This Seawolves team, as you said, hit a wall. And I think part of that, for virtually every goal up until the end of the Liberty game and the shootouts, every goal for both teams were essentially scored off breakaways. So, it was really the breakouts where Liberty was able to exploit the Seawolves' weaknesses. And they haven't shown many since that game loss against Davenport, of how strong they've played on defensive and offensive. But yeah, I thought Liberty just did a good job controlling the puck, especially in game 1. They outshot Seawolves 40-34. But again, just outnumbering the Seawolves on the offensive end. Having guys like Matt Bartell set up Josh Fricks for a cross-crease pass. And at that point, there's nothing Kazakov could do. When you're outnumbered 2-on-1 defenders and they're shooting at the near right post. So, the Flames for Liberty, that Friday game, they took advantage early of the possession game. And again, those breakouts. And the Seawolves definitely performed better Saturday. And they actually snapped Liberty's streak of 37 consecutive penalty kills on its home ice. So it was the first time they've given up a power play goal at home this season. And it even took a 2-0 lead to start the game. But Liberty's offense just too much for the Seawolves to handle. And Casey, I think just showing the exploits of how you can beat the Seawolves team, which has been very tough to beat.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like you said, like I think they've definitely played better Saturday, and just ultimately I think Liberty just, like you said, showed them their, like, provoked their weaknesses in a sense, you know, like especially towards the end of the game where, you know,
I think they have that Saturday game where there was that.
Yes, they totally
that power play. Yeah, or not power play, but it took the extra man.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and that generated high scoring chance. And honestly, it was the number games at the end of the day that really burnt the Seawolves. Because again, they were up 3-2 with a minute 50 remaining. But once the Flames pulled their goalie, the Seawolves again outnumbered, literally finding the extra man and cashed in with a goal to force it into overtime, ultimately the shootout. And Matt, we talked about last week how the Seawolves' strength have been its aggressiveness, running the 1-3 run, playing aggressive, especially on the boards, pinning a lot of the opposing attackers and wingers against the boards. So you can't really go through this team, or because they're going to take a piece of you. Well, it was sort of flipped on its head this weekend because Liberty really did a lot of that, a lot of pressing. And it was both teams, I thought, they were equal, I think, in terms of size and also aggressiveness. So adding into how to beat the Seawolves team, you know, if you're able to match that aggressiveness or even be more aggressive, like we saw Liberty do, and really punish them in between the blue lines and control that puck battle, you're ultimately going to come away with a couple goals in your pocket, Matt.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I, again, haven't seen this Liberty team yet. I will when they come to the rinks. They traditionally, they're kind of like Davenport in that they've got size. They've got big guys there. And if they can match the Seawolves' speed at the very least, they can give the Seawolves a rough time. And it's clear that they did.
And watching the games, that's ultimately what happened. You know, Seawolves were outmatched, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but honestly, it's how they won. They were just outnumbered. Again, a lot of Liberty's success came on the breakouts and the breakaways, and the Seawolves backline ultimately didn't have an answer for the Liberty attack.
Because no one up to this point had been able to match the Seawolves' speed.
And power, yeah.
Yeah, I think that really makes the difference. Again, they're going to stand in their way. Because not only could they potentially stand in their way in the regular season, in the postseason as well, if the Seawolves end up facing them.
Agreed. I think they will, and it's going to be a fun battle. I don't see the Seawolves moving down too far out of the top 25. Again, they lost to the number 3 team, might get bumped down a couple spots, but again, you know, teams they face like Adrian and Davenport are 9 and 10, so I really can't see them going any lower than 8. I'd be surprised if they got knocked out of the top 5, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I'm honestly really interested to see how they can bounce back in January.
Because you make a good point here, because we're looking at, on their upcoming schedule, they will be taking on Syracuse, and Syracuse is going to be out for revenge because they got embarrassed in the first weekend of the season by identical 8-1 scores. Now, I don't necessarily think that they're going to have as much trouble with them, the Seawolves, that they had with Liberty, but Syracuse is going to be out for blood. That could be ugly.
Yeah, I think, again, seeing this game, they're also going to take a lot from that, and I think try to apply that same level of aggressiveness. I don't know necessarily if they got the players to do that, though, obviously, to match up with them. You know, just looking at this team, you know, they are 3-8 overall in the season, but 2 of those games were forfeit wins over Drexel. So they only really won one time on the ice, and that was against Oswego State in the shootout. And they're coming off 6-1 and 4-2 losses against the Rams of Rhode Island. So I think they're still looking for their offense ultimately. And that's definitely something the Seawolves can capitalize on, as we saw in the season openers, where the Seawolves had no issues, you know, finding their offense, getting that attack open and active against the Orange. You know, having guys like Connor Dempsey and guys like Charles Peck, team's leading scorer, you know, they were shut down a bit this week, But ultimately, I see next week as a weekend where they can really bounce back.
I agree.
Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be covering it with very good reason, because Saturday, November 13th, we have the football game against Villanova in the afternoon, and we have women's basketball on Sunday the 14th against St. John's. And that's where we have to go to next, because this time next week we will have a couple of basketball games under our belts. We will not have any men's games yet, because the women play Tuesday, November 9th against Delaware State in the indoor sports complex, Island Federal Credit Union Arena, 6:15 start here on WUSB. The men will be at George Mason to face the Patriots down at the Patriot Center. Would love to do that game, but we do have the women at home. And then we have women again against St. John's. We will not be seeing the men until the following Thursday, November 18th, at Kansas. And that we'll probably be doing from the studio, but maybe we can get out there. Hopefully. That'd be a great experience for anybody who does it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up...
Go ahead.
I was saying I'm glad you brought up those games, because I think the interesting thing is for both, especially the men's team, is they got a lot of really interesting key matchups on their schedule this season. Obviously, for the men hosting the Stony Brook Classic, but on top of that as well, seeing them face the number 3 Kansas Jayhawks on November 18th, then traveling right before Christmas to take on the Florida Gators, December 22nd to be exact. And of course, obviously, you can't take away from those battles against Vermont, who were ranked just under the Seawolves men's team in the coaches poll. And those games taking place January 12th and the 26th. Still a lot of bad blood between those two teams. And Vermont, obviously I don't think they're thrilled with playing second fiddle to the Seawolves before, and this incoming roster they have before they've even played a game together.
So, much has been made of the Seawolves being chosen to finish first in both women's and men's basketball.
Yeah.
And the women are no surprise. The men, I think, is a little bit more of a surprise.
I agree. Well, we'll start with the women first, why they were chosen first overall. Obviously, back-to-back champs, reigning and defending champs in the America East. A lot of questions at the end of that 2020 season, because obviously didn't get to play the game against Maine due to COVID pandemic hitting, shutting down the sports world. And a lot of folks on the Maine side especially didn't feel like Stony Brook were the champions. Well, they came out and showed everyone why they were and why they deserved to be called it in 2020 and 2021, of picking up a big win against Maine, first at home, and on top of that, going all the way to the finals and pulling off, I guess, the upset through rankings, but not really that much of a surprise even following the Seawolves, pulling off that victory against Maine to go to the NCAA tournament for the first time. This is a Seawolves team last year that led the conference in scoring defense, holding opponents to 52 points per game, blocked shots at 75, 792 rebounds, and a rebound margin of +6. And overall, as a scoring defense, this team was 4th in the nation. Now, obviously, there's a lot of differences between last year's and this year's team. The biggest being no Coach McCombs. She's left, gone to, I believe, George Washington. And in her place will be a new coach. And it's going to be very fun to see that for the Seawolves and how they adapt to that. And again, it's going to be fun. There's some new pieces as well. Obviously, we know about how good India Padan is. She's coming back for one final season, playing with Team Puerto Rico in the Olympics, the first Seawolf Olympian to play in basketball and women's basketball. It's incredible to see. But on top of that as well, Annie Warren, who was the MVP for the team in that win against Maine and her 34-point performance against the Black Bears. Mackenzie Boucher also probably going to take the starting 5 role. Veronica Charles, a transfer, coming in as well. And obviously Earlette Scott in the point guard position. Obviously going to be trying to win her second consecutive title with the Seawolves team. So it's going to be fun. There's a lot of interesting storylines coming into it. Ashley Langford, of course, coming in, bringing her crew with her. And again, she, much like Coach McCombs, was the point guard, was the best point guard in Tulane during her playing time. And coming in from JMU, a great collegiate program, a lot of sports, basketball included, but she really brings that point guard first mentality. So I really see Annie Warren, Erlette Scott, Gigi Gonzalez really stepping up this season, similarly to how we've seen point guards in the past, like Shorty Johnson, like Jerome Matthews, or just guards in general, rather, really step up for this team under Coach McCombs. Matt.
I think that this is going to be, well, first of all, I don't necessarily think they're going to run the table and go undefeated, but the whole point, it's nice when you're covering a good team.
Oh yes, we need that in New York. Don't have too many.
One of my favorite experiences was covering the 1998 Yankees when you just pencil in the win ahead of time. I don't think they're going to be that dominant. I do believe that this is the best team in the America East. I do believe that poll is legit. I do believe they were the best team in the America East last year, and they proved it. So it's nice to be a king of the mountain, so to speak.
The queen at this point, yeah.
Yes. But now, talk about the kings of the mountain right now, going into the season, the men. So this is, trying to think the last time the men were picked to finish first. With Albany, and Vermont breathing down their necks all the time, that's quite an achievement. Because everybody just pencils in Vermont and they just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think a big part is the roster overturn, number one, with Vermont. They're right behind Stony Brook in the coaches' poll. So Stony Brook has 77 total points, 5 coaches voting in their favor. Vermont was 74, 4 in their favor. UNH was 64, the other lone vote from the coaches. But yeah, it's still close, obviously. And while these polls aren't the end-all, be-all, it does give an idea to how these coaches and these teams are thinking, who they're really looking out for in terms of the upcoming matchups on the calendar, and how seriously they're going to take some games versus others, and the strategies and how far in advance they're going to prepare for these teams. Stony Brook and Vermont, Stony Brook in particular, obviously, is going to be on everyone's radars, I think, because the roster overturn, like we saw with teams like Vermont, a lot of their good players graduating. UNH, same thing. Hartford, similarly as well. Seawolves, they were one of the few teams a couple years ago where they didn't have a senior on the roster. And even last year, they had a lot of underclassmen or juniors on the roster. So you still have guys with a year or two left of experience. Add in the incoming roster of guys like Elijah Olani making his return. Guys like Jaleel Jenkins coming from Fairleigh Dickinson. Anthony Roberts from St. Bonaventure's. And Tanaj Petaway coming from Indian Rivers. And they bring a total of over 4,200 career points, which is the best in the nation. So I think that incoming class was a big factor for why this team is so highly touted, coming in to a roster that last year was third in the conference in field goals made, second in the conference, or rather second overall in terms of free throws made. So they're a team that could get to the bucket inside especially.
You know what you're seeing? You're seeing the game evolve. You know how the three-point shot changed the game, how certain rule changes will alter the way teams are put together, the way coaches approach things. The transfer portal could be the next little thing that changes the game.
Oh, I think it's already changed, yeah. And honestly, with the pandemic, definitely was a game changer, Matt.
Yeah, because the Seawolves benefited big time from it. And other schools, look at St. John's, they did too. But take a look at how Gino Ford has put together this team. He goes with youth and builds a core and then adds pieces, kind of like a pro team.
Mm-hmm.
So he's adding the pieces, and he's got a powerhouse.
Yeah, again, in the conference as well, a conference where we really don't know who's going to step up. We know Stony Brook's going to be good. Well, we predict Stony Brook's going to be good. We said something about soccer that ended up betting out. But we predict, Stony Brook's going to be good. Vermont, obviously, you can't rule that team out until they miss postseason. UNH, obviously, there's some hype there. even Hartford, haven't reached the top of the mountain, but have been successful the past couple seasons. UMBC as well, gonna factor there. But I think just the uncertainty of it all definitely, plays a role, as well as knowing what you're going to get with this Stony Brook team, which is a lot of shooting, a lot of scoring inside especially. And these transfers, they're big because not only do you get veteran experience, you get a refined Elijah Olani with a year of ACC experience under his belt. But you also get shooters and guys who can really dominate from beyond the arc and add on to a team that I thought really struggled from the 3-point range last season. They were last in 3-point shooting percentage, being held under 30%, and they only took 6 threes per game. I thought that was a big reason why they lost a lot of those games last year. It's because when they were down, they were missing a lot of threes, and ultimately they would shy away from it and try to work inside. And it'd be too long before this team could even chip away at a double-digit deficit.
Nobody can do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a real killer. Because that is the right thing to do. If you're not hitting your shots in the field, you drive, you draw fouls, earn it on the line. That makes sense. And they still do that in the NBA, but the whole point is that to overcome a double-digit deficit, you need threes.
Yeah, and just looking
you need to be able to hit from outside. Otherwise, they'll just pack in the paint and you're done.
And looking at this projected starting 5, there's a lot of guys who can definitely shoot from long range. We know about the greatness from Frankie Policelli. We see him, going up and really building off his prior season. Jaleel Jenkins coming in from Fairleigh Dickinson, a great shooter from beyond the arc, great inside the paint as well. We know how good Olani is everywhere, inside, outside. He's guaranteed 20 points per game. Also have Juan Felix Rodriguez, who led the team in points and shooting as well. And on top of that, you got a big man inside in Jaden Sales, who's going to be called upon to really be the lead board grabber for this team with Mo Gee transferring.
That's where we still have to see what we have here. Because you did lose some guys. You have new guys coming in. And while they look good on paper, trying to get them to play as a unit is, of course, a challenge for the coaching staff. And I think Gino Ford and company will be looking at that in the early going. And then so will we. How these guys play together.
If there's something I want to see from Gino Ford and his play calling, I want to see that more, more calls for the 3-point game, because you didn't see it too much last season. And after, going a couple seasons where, you expect this team to really be prominent from beyond the arc, it just didn't happen. And, you look at those games, those close games they lost, like the 72-67 loss against Hofstra back in December, or the 67-64 loss at home against UNH on January 17, and you think back to those games, and that UNH game in particular, where the Seawolves only shot 5 of 19, going up against a UNH team that shot 10 of 30. You think, what if they
not
call
great
for
either?
No, but as you're still shooting at a better clip and a higher clip overall, and you just think, what if they made more of those shots? What if they took more of those shots like we saw UNH do? Could the game have changed? Could it have gone the other way?
Well, when it's down to 3 points, yes, you do look at those little things. You look at performance on the free throw line. You do.
Yeah. Even that game against UMass Lowell in the postseason, where the Seawolves actually did start, to take those next steps, take 22 3-pointers. They only made 8, while UMass Lowell shot 5 of 17. So not great shooting really from either side, but it just kind of going to show you saw, those next steps I thought last season. And if they had the guys, had the shooters that they have now, you sort of think, what was the potential of this team as compared to what they ended up being, which was a 9-14 team, finishing under 500 in the conference. So, yeah, this is going to be a team, a lot of challenges, as we said, on this regular season roster, starting with George Mason on the 9th, facing number 3 Kansas on the 18th, but it is going to be a fun one. So it's going to be fun to watch, especially seeing the level of competition these two teams draw in.